Welcome back to the Hardware Unbox News Corner and what is the final episode of 2019. We still do have some other videos we'll be publishing throughout the rest of the year, but yeah, our release schedule will slow down a bit from next week through to the new year as both Steve and I take a break, spend some time with family and enjoy the holiday period. And I hope everyone watching also gets the chance to do the same and relax before the big hardware release period at CES in early 2020. And before we get into this week's news, VaioTech is the kind of company you want on your side. A tech company for gamers, by gamers, dedicated to making only the best monitors at real-world prices. And here at Hardware Unboxed, we've tested and continue to recommend many of these displays. VaioTech have made a name for themselves building feature-rich products that you don't have to be rich to get. All VaioTech gaming monitors are protected by a zero-tolerance dead pixel policy, with customer support fully staffed in the US. And now they offer an all-new 3-year warranty. Solid performance, beautiful build, monitors that won't break the bank. Learn more at viotech.com. Alright, so there haven't been a ton of news stories this week to cover, so what I will start with today are some discounts right before Christmas for some highly popular AMD products. Pricing for these things can fluctuate a lot, sometimes within hours, so I'm not 100% sure that by the time this video goes live the discounts will still be available, but fingers crossed they are, and if not, well, I guess everyone watching can be disappointed they missed out on a pretty good deal. Anyway, the first good deal of the day is the AMD Ryzen 5 3600X for $200, down from its usual price of $250. The CPU was briefly available for $200 at the end of last month, but it seems for the last couple of days, several retailers, including Amazon and B&H, are selling the CPU once again for $200. If you're in the market for a super capable mid-range CPU, this is a great buy, and at current pricing, I would be recommending this over the Ryzen 5 3600, which is currently selling for $190. So for what amounts to just $10 more, you are getting slightly higher rated clock speeds, although we found previously that the X and non-X models in practice perform basically the same when you use the same cooler. However, the 3600X does come with a better Wraith Spire box cooler compared to the Wraith Stealth with the 3600, and if you are using the box cooler, that does mean the 3600X performs slightly better due to the way AMD's boost algorithms work with better coolers. AMD tells us the X models are also better binned, although with our samples, overclocking potential was exactly the same with the 3600 and 3600X, so that probably isn't a consideration either. But given just the $10 price difference, spending the extra cash on the 3600X to get that better cooler and potentially some better binning and clock speed performance seems like a decent buy. The 3800X has also come down in price a fair bit, selling these days for $340 compared to its launch price of $400, but these current prices aren't the lowest we've seen and aren't anything special, mostly because the near identical 3700X is just $310. Again, not a special price and not the lowest in the past month, but that's the better buy for $30 less than the 3800X. We've also had a fair few of our Patreon members telling us that you can now get Radeon RX 5700 GPUs for as low as $300, which is a pretty decent price these days given the MSRP on those cards is $350. However, you might need to shop around to get the best deals. The XFX Ultra model, for example, is one of the $300 cards, and that's only available at those prices through stores like Best Buy and B&H. Most cards on places like Newegg are still up around $350, but with flash sales happening quite often to bring the price down a bit lower, it is worth shopping around if you are interested in a Navi GPU. Not sure if you'll be able to get any of these products in time for Christmas, and I'm sure there will be more sales immediately after, like every single year, but I guess these are some prices you can benchmark against for those sales. In any case, we love pointing out deals when they arrive, and yeah, these seem pretty good. Another thing we've been discussing with our Patreon members recently, shout out to our Patreon exclusive Discord chat, if you're not a member, might be worth signing up, links in the description, is the news that the Radeon RX 5500 XT is being hamstrung by PCIe 3.0 performance and runs much faster when bumped up to PCIe 4.0. This comes from a German website, pcgameshardware.de, who tested the RX 5500 XT 4GB version with the VRAM capacity fully maxed out and found the card was much much faster on PCIe 4.0 compared to PCIe 3.0. Sometimes the results were showing a more than 20% gain in favor of the PCIe 4.0 configuration, with much smaller gains for the 8GB model given it's harder to max out the frame buffer there. There is some logical reasoning behind this. The RX 5500 XT is wired as a PCIe 4.0 x 8 card, although like all GPUs it still has a x16 tab and requires a full slot. Presumably this is to cut down on costs while still mostly providing enough bandwidth. On PCIe 3.0 motherboards, the card uses PCIe 3.0 x 8, but naturally on a PCIe 4.0 configuration, say with a 3rd gen Ryzen CPU on an X570 motherboard, it gets bumped up to PCIe 4.0 x 8 with twice the bandwidth, equivalent to PCIe 3.0 x 16. When the frame buffer is full, the card needs to transfer much more data through the PCIe lanes as it swaps stuff in and out of the GDDR6 memory. Theoretically, having the extra speed of PCIe 4.0 would improve this transfer rate and lead to improved performance if memory access was a limiting performance factor. Now at this point we don't know whether PCGamesHardware.de's results are accurate. This sort of issue does make sense, but we are looking into it and hopefully we'll have more to share soon. But as I'm sure you're aware, we like to do things thoroughly and test a lot of stuff, so yeah, stay tuned on that one. Just thought I'd update you all, given we are receiving a ton of requests to look into it. We are looking into it, and yeah, hopefully we'll have some results in the coming weeks. Next up, we have more AMD Radeon RX 5600 XT rumors, this time through Gigabyte. Last week, we saw several RX 5600 XT models pass through the Eurasian Economic Commission. This time, we see 32 graphics cards pass through from Gigabyte's upcoming Eagle lineup. These include RX 5600 XT 6GB models, as well as RX 5500 XT 4GB, although no 8GB RX 5500s. Maybe Gigabyte has dropped that model for now while prices remain far too high. Alongside this, it also seems like we're getting Eagle models for Nvidia's entire current gen lineup, at least up to the RTX 2080 Super, as well as RX 5700 series cards. No idea what sort of price category these cards will fall in, but yeah, Eagle is a pretty cool name, so there's that, I guess. We are hearing more talk among board partners about the RX 5600 XT, and from what we know of AMD's plans at CES, it seems very likely at this point that some sort of new GPU product will be talked about, along with new Ryzen APUs, so it shouldn't be too much longer until we hear more about this GPU and what AMD are doing to plug the hole in their lineup between the entry-level 5500 and the more mid-range 5700 series. For the synthetic benchmark fans out there, UL Benchmarks have just discontinued a bunch of their popular 3D Mark and PC Mark tools, although most of these are quite old, so those relying on the big modern tests like TimeSpy and Firestrike will thankfully still be unaffected. The big ones to reach unsupported status are 3D Mark 11 and PC Mark 7. Really, you shouldn't be using these tests in 2019 anymore, given they are old and don't represent modern applications or games, but UL Benchmarks are officially pulling the plug on January 14, 2020. This means they won't be sold through various app stores, they won't receive updates, and yeah, they just won't be supported anymore. Several other benchmarks have also been cut, including 3D Mark CloudGate and Ice Storm on PCs, which makes sense, as these tests are pretty heavily limited by things like the CPU these days, even on low-end hardware. 3D Mark recommends switching to Night Raid as a replacement for these tests on modern hardware. PowerMark is also being cut, with UL suggesting PC Mark 10 as a replacement. We don't do a ton of benchmarking with 3D Mark or PC Mark, as we prefer to use real-world applications and games, but I know a lot of people like these tools, so it's at least a little bit interesting. A Reddit user by the name of _Rogame has uncovered a bunch of codes relating to AMD's upcoming Ryzen APUs in AMD's bootcamp drivers for December 2019. These codes, when cross-referenced with known codes for existing products, tell us a bit about what to expect from these new APUs, which are expected to pack Zen 2 CPU cores and updated Navi GPUs, all built on 7nm. From the list, it seems AMD is splitting their APU lineup into 4 segments. We have 15W and 45W parts for mobile, as well as 35W and 65W parts for the desktop. Most of these lineups have both consumer and pro versions, which is nothing new for AMD's CPU lineup and should happen again here. For the 15W mobile SKUs, it seems we have multiple GPU configurations, B6, B8, B10, and B12, which, going on past naming, should correspond to 6, 8, 10, and 12 compute units, although some configurations could see these chips have an extra CU unlocked or perhaps one down from that number. 45 watt mobile parts drop the B6 configuration, while on the desktop at 65 watt there is a B6 config but no B12. The 35 watt parts continue this trend while adding in a lower end B4 configuration, potentially with 3 or 4 compute units. This suggests the GPU die AMD is set to use with their upcoming APUs has between 12 and 14 compute units, which is a couple of compute units more than with Zen based APUs, which topped out at 11. On top of this, we'll be seeing an architecture upgrade from Vega with GCN to Navi with RDNA, which provides additional performance per compute unit. It's hard to say exactly where performance will land given we don't know clock speeds, but if they can keep clocks relatively similar to previous generations, we could be seeing top-end Ryzen APUs boast substantial GPU performance gains. If AMD do end up producing APUs with 8 CPU cores and that sort of GPU, this would be one of the more exciting APU launches in recent memory, especially if they can achieve that on mobile. 7nm should be big for mobile platforms, but I'm sure there are plenty of people that would also love an 8-core AMD APU for desktop with improved graphics capabilities. Time to round out this episode with a few monitor stories, starting with the ASUS TUF Gaming VG279QM. Interestingly, the TUF brand has become a bit of a breeding ground for ASUS's new monitor technologies, first with eLMB sync monitors like the VG27AQ, which I'll be reviewing soon by the way, and now with this beast which packs an IPS display that refreshes at up to 280Hz. This is still a technically unannounced monitor, at least in Western markets, although we expect it'll become a bigger deal around CES when a lot of companies like ASUS start to push out new displays. We have just seen 240Hz IPS at 1080p hit the market, and it seems this new panel is basically overclocking that up to 280Hz through an optional feature while retaining cool stuff like eLMB sync and adaptive sync. It's great to see IPS monitors come out with such high refresh rates, and I think we'll hear more about that in the next few weeks. Couple of interesting new monitors coming out from LG as well. We have the 27GN950, which is a 4K display that pushes up to 160Hz with an IPS panel, utilizing display stream compression to achieve that without needing to deal with horrible chroma subsampling. It'll be adaptive sync and use LG's new Nano IPS with 1 millisecond response times. So think 27GL850 but 4K and slightly higher refresh too, and we should see some semi-HDR functionality with Display HDR 600 certification. The other main monitor is the 38WN95C, which brings a 38-inch ultra-wide nano IPS panel at 3840 by 1600 and a 144Hz refresh rate, plus Display HDR 600 certification and adaptive sync. This should be a good alternative for the 38GL950G, which packs similar specs but clocks up to 175Hz and uses one of NVIDIA's G-Sync modules. It's pretty likely that these monitors won't come out for a while, even if they do get announced at CES, which is pretty common for a lot of monitor OEMs. Still, exciting developments there that we'll try and review as soon as possible. That's it for this week's News Corner. As always, you can subscribe to get this segment in your inbox every week, although, yeah, probably won't be an episode for the next couple of weeks, and we'll be back in January when the whole hardware news thing picks up again because, yeah, there's not usually a lot of releases over the Christmas period. What else? Yeah, support us through Patreon. If you're interested, you can get access to our Discord chat where we chat with a lot of you guys throughout the week about all the news that comes out. You can also grab shirts like this. I think this is still available through the merch store. If you're interested, still a limited time product. And yeah, we'll catch you in the next one.